Hi everyone, my name is Mariana and I work in the cloud platform team here in Amsterdam. Thank you a lot for joining our online webinar. Today we're going to discuss how you can build your next cool app with GCP solutions such as PubSub, AppEgine, Firebase. And as a continuation from our last webinar with Qlouder's specialist Stefan on Firebase, we're now going to touch different topics on what solutions do we have to really build a cool app, answering also the questions that you sent us in advance. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Stefan at Qlouder.com if you have any additional questions or if you want to know how Qlouder can help with your project. And also don't hesitate to attend our event here in Google's Amsterdam office on 5th of July. Send us any feedback that you have for the online webinars, any topics that you wanted to discuss or you want to see in the future. Let's start.
All right, thank you very much, Mariana, and I'd like to welcome Mandy. Mandy's going to do an introduction. She's going to introduce herself, but I'm very happy that she's here because she knows a lot about the platform the platform as a whole, and she's we've done a few presentations together, and so I speak at some events. So I'm very happy that she's here. So Mandy, without further ado, please introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks, Stefan. So I'm Mandy Waite. I'm a developer advocate at Google. I work on Google Cloud Platform exclusively. I generally talk about compute stuff, things like Kubernetes, Google Container Engine, Google App Engine, Google Compute Engine, and the entire platform generally. So yeah, developer advocacy is all about kind of getting the message out about our products, making sure that our product teams are building the best products for you guys, for you developers out there.
Excellent. So yeah, as I said, you probably know quite a bit about the whole platform, or I know for a fact you know quite a bit about the whole platform. What I've seen over the past years is that the Google Cloud Platform really grew from just one product like AppEgine all the way to a whole stack of applications. Is there how do you feel that AppEgine fits into the whole stack?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, back in 2008, we launched AppEgine, but I think there's fundamentally more things behind it, really. I mean, so quite a while back, we kind of discovered we have all these nuts and bolts when you build a cloud, when you build a data centers and wire them all together. You have virtual machines, you have networks, you have all of this other stuff, storage that you have to put in and wire together. And why you don't have to do physical stuff anymore, I mean, somebody does somewhere, but as a developer, you don't have to worry about the actual hardware. You have to worry about the virtual representations, like the networking stuff, the virtual machine and the storage. And you have to bring them all together and wire them up and build a platform effectively to run your stuff on. And so that kind of thing is exactly what we have today with other clouds out there, that kind of nuts and bolts stuff where you build stuff. But we kind of really felt that we needed to do it differently within Google in order to scale the way that we do for application services such as Gmail, web search, and YouTube, those kind of things. So up until about 2 years ago, we used exactly that same kind of cloud that I just described, but we just realized we couldn't scale fast enough. And so what we did effectively is reinvent everything and change the way we built things, the way we built infrastructure, the way we exposed that to our developers. So we call what we have today the kind of third wave cloud, which is a combination of automated services and scalable data. And AppEgine is a key part of that. So AppEgine is used internally, many of our internal web services and websites. And it was always originally an internal service as opposed to an external one. But 7 or 8 years ago, we exposed it externally. Starting with Python support initially, and then moving on to Java. Since then, we've added Go support, Golang, and also PHP. These days, we support later versions of those platforms and also Node.js. But effectively, what we've also been able to do now is expose it to pretty much anybody. If you want to run your own stack, providing you comply to certain things, you can run pretty much any stack on Google AppEgine today. So the whole idea really around AppEgine is zero ops, where you don't have to worry about managing the platform and the software stack on which you run your code. You can focus on writing that code, developing the code, not have to worry about building infrastructure, deploying stacks, updating them, managing them, and maintaining them. Because we do all of that for you. So we have site reliability engineers to make sure that AppEgine is always running. We periodically update all of the services and instances that are running your software stacks to the latest versions to make sure you don't have any security vulnerabilities, that kind of thing. So that's the way pretty much AppEgine works, and it's extremely popular.
Yeah, I love the fact that you mentioned some of that you don't have to do the patching and all the heavy lifting and look after the scaling, because we've been using AppEgine in I think the majority of our projects for the last couple of years, and I know for a fact that we have some customers that have absolutely, well, we tell them in advance, of course, that we are going to use Google Cloud Platform and we're going to use AppEgine, but then in their day-to-day operations, they have no idea that it's running on AppEgine because it's always there, it's always on. They never get a message, oh, the system is down because so-and-so needs to do a patch or anything like that, which is really beautiful. And with the maintenance that you guys do on it, even applications that we developed maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and that we didn't need to touch because there was no need to update the code or anything, or because it was sometimes we actually write applications that have no bugs in it. So that means that your application is out there and it's running there, and we don't have to, as a developer and as the partner for a customer, we don't have to worry about, oh, this goes out of this Java version, or this SDK version goes out of scope, and now we have to update things and all that. It's just there. And once it runs, it runs beautifully. So that's we're actually quite happy with that, and so are our customers. So for us, it's been a very, very reliable part of the whole Google Cloud Platform, and with the whole ecosystem starting around it, that's actually becoming more and more something that we really like. One of the things that we do worry about sometimes is, okay, so what if we build an application and we're kind of tied into other services? How do we make sure that we keep this basically AppEgine agnostic, or kind of how do we get the agnostic part into the solution that we're building? Can you maybe elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I definitely can. So AppEgine kind of like has two different environments. It has the standard environment and the flexible environment, and the standard environment provides massive scale, very rapid scale, and it's extremely scalable in that respect. And many people run their applications on that today. We also have the flexible environment, which is a little bit different. It basically is focused on allowing you to build your application code anywhere. Any code that you build, any web-based code that can expose port 8080 can effectively be used within the AppEgine flexible environment. And what we made available now is some client libraries that can be used inside AppEgine or outside of AppEgine, and they can effectively expose all of our internal services, all of the Google Cloud Platform services, to running code from pretty much anywhere. So, for example, if you wanted to build a Node.js application today on AppEgine, you would do your development locally, probably using NPM, with all package.json, all the environment and tools that you're familiar with, and also one configuration file. And we're even doing more to get rid of the configuration file as well. But ultimately, you provide a configuration file, and then you run the code locally, do all your testing. And once you're ready to deploy, maybe to production, maybe to staging, maybe you have your own development environment running within AppEgine itself, you can then just effectively just run command on the command line and deploy the application to AppEgine directly. And all of the calls, we manage the authentication for you inside AppEgine. And if you're interested, we did a talk at Google I/O about how the whole thing works and walked you through building an application. It's called Photo Scavenger Hunt. That is a game that people can play and effectively walks you through the whole development process for building an application. Deploys to AppEgine, uses the Cloud Vision API, uses different storage services for storing images and also for storing metadata. but it runs outside of AppEgine and it runs equally well inside AppEgine. Now, the only thing you have to take care of outside of AppEgine is authentication, and that's really straightforward as well. We can just provide a credentials file, set an environment variable, and exactly the same code that you run on AppEgine will run outside of AppEgine or anywhere else, even on AWS if you want to. So yeah, effectively you can just take the whole application and move it wherever you like. The reason we'd run it on AppEgine is because we can scale it really well. We can handle all the updates for you, as we've already described. We can also do interesting things like versioning, so we can provide different versions of your application, and they can be running side by side, and you can split traffic between different versions. Say, I want to do A/B testing. I've got a new version. I'm going to have 10% of my traffic go to the new version, 90% go to the old version. And when I'm completely confident that the new version is functioning as I expect, I can just directly all of the traffic straight over to the new version and deprecate the old version effectively. And that's extremely powerful. We have many other features like that as well, including login, debugging, tracing, all of these services that can be applied to your application. And we can talk about that more as well shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely should, because what I like about using AppEgine as a developer is that it really allows me to just focus on the development. I don't have to, as we talked about before, I don't have to worry about the scaling of my application. And AppEgine just, if I get more users, it'll scale up. If I have dropping users, because for example, I'm doing a business application and it's out of business hours, the actual usage drops, and so my instances drop and all that. So it creates a very flexible environment for me. The part you said about the authentication, that actually triggers something with me, because a lot of our customers also use Google Apps, and having that Google Apps ID or the Google identity will allow you to very easily identify your users within AppEgine as well. And I think that's a pretty good feature. And one of the things that you mentioned with the Qlouder APIs, or with the code base that we have, if we run it in flexible, we'll still be able to use all the good stuff that I love about standardization with a data store, with Memcache and all that, the queues and all that. Do I still get access to that, or?
Yeah, you still get access to it. So basically, when we created AppEgine, we provided access to a very scalable data service called Cloud Data Store. Well, it was called Data Store back then, and it was just tied exclusively to AppEgine. And effectively, what Data Store was a layer or a couple of layers on top of our internal service called Bigtable. And Bigtable scales dynamically for us. We don't have to worry about adding the infrastructure. Somebody else takes care of that. Something automated takes care of that for us. And so we built Data Store on top of it, in the knowledge that AppEgine will scale massively and dynamically, and you would need some storage service that could do exactly the same. There's no point in being able to ramp up from 1 user to 10,000 users very quickly if you can't store the data in the same way and you can't handle that kind of processing. So the Data Store scales dynamically with AppEgine, and they were tied together for a while, but then a couple of years ago we split the Data Store out into a separate service, and so now it's called the Cloud Data Store, and it's accessible via an API. And so using those libraries we talked about earlier, which are effectively called the Google Cloud Client Libraries, we can access the Google Cloud Data Store from within application code running anywhere. That includes AppEgine. So you can take advantage of the Data Store directly from the application code wherever you're running it, and that includes AppEgine. So I always want to kind of make sure that the point is that you can run this stuff anywhere. You get lots of advantages from running on AppEgine, but you can run the code wherever you like.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned a couple of other services, right? What other services?
Well, things like Memcache, yeah.
So Memcache, so effectively when we run your application, we run it in a Docker container, and we provide a sidecar container called running Memcache effectively for you that acts as a proxy for your Memcache calls. So you can basically make simple calls to Memcache like you would do in any application, and that will go straight to our Memcache proxy, which will send more to our managed Memcache service.
Right. By the way, for those of you who are not familiar with Memcache, it is what it says. It's a memory cache. It allows you to store data in memory and have that information available across the different instances of your application. Because as we explained earlier, when you run an AppEgine application and the application gets more usage, then you start getting multiple instances of the application. And for example, if you're a Java developer and you're used to doing stuff in like private static, then information will be retained in the actual instance. And if you want to have information shared across instances, then Memcache is a very useful tool to actually share data or share kind of static, well, not necessarily static, but share data between instances of your application. And yeah, the beautiful part of it is that we can do that within the standard application, but also within the flexible runtime. One of the things you mentioned earlier, when you were talking about all the cool stuff that we can do with AppEgine, you mentioned that we can direct traffic and maybe do like a test and all that, and that we can have multiple versions and things like that. That's all good when you're introducing new stuff. We also find that it's very good to do that when we're introducing a new version, but as with any version, there might still be some issues in there, or if we're doing for example, a deployment to a staging environment, you just want to do some testing on some of the how your application performs. In early days, most of the developers might be used to run their code locally and get their debugging in and things like that, and set their breakpoints. I know that AppEgine has a lot of cool tools for that, but can you maybe say something more about it? Maybe some of the state driver stuff and the integration with Git and Bitbucket and things like that.
Yeah, sure. So again, this goes back to this. We should probably provide a link for it. The talk we did at Google I/O, where we showed the whole end-to-end deployment of an app, but we also showed debugging and tracing. So starting off with tracing gives you the ability to actually see where RPCs are being made within your application and how much time you spend on each of those RPCs. Those RPCs could be probably often will be calls to other Google services, but they could also be calls to other services outside of Google. And the example we showed was making calls to the Cloud Vision API to do image classification. You basically provide images, and the Cloud Vision API would send you back what it saw as images within those labels within those images, and we showed integration with that. And you'll see the latency of how long you would spend talking to the Cloud Vision API. And we also introduced some latency as well by making calls to Twitter, to the Twitter API, nested calls, which actually slowed everything down by about a second per response. And you can see the whole latency, the whole latency graph. By looking at that, you can debug latency issues in your application very, very quickly. They're called by RPCs. That's extremely powerful. It's extremely easy to set up. And also we have the ability to do error reporting, to dive into the logs and actually look for specific types of errors and highlight those and call out to things like PagerDuty and such like, and other tools that you use to get alerted when applications are breaking and failing for some reason, which is, again, an absolute requirement for any production app nowadays. That's all part of the stack driver suite, which you mentioned. And also we have debugging as well. So if you upload your code to a Git repository that we have within the cloud platform itself, you can effectively set breakpoints. And I'm using the word breakpoint now, but they're not really breakpoints because we're talking about debugging production level services, and that's going to be a problem, right? So you have 10,000 users using your application and you're setting a breakpoint on the app. That doesn't sound very good. So what we call it instead, we call it a snapshot effectively. And so when we set the snapshot on the actual code itself, we will stop the world for something that's actually running your code, but it's not actually servicing requests from your users. And at that point, we can then look in that snapshot of the running code and see all of the variables and do watches and such like on the variables to see what values they are and look at call stacks, those kind of things, and debug code that's actually running in production at that time. And that's extremely powerful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We use it, for example, when we have data flowing through a PubSub, through the Google PubSub system. We write AppEgine applications that actually listen to events happening in PubSub, and then based on the data that we get from basically the PubSub message that we get, we need those breakpoints or those snapshots to because most of the time things go okay. Sometimes things might get a bit funky. You might run into an issue, and having those snapshots, especially in an environment that can combined with PubSub, can really handle like an enormous amount of data per second. Having that specific snapshot and being able to look at that data and see how your application actually handles some of the stuff, that is one of the really powerful features. And I think looking at, we've been using AppEgine, as I said, from the get-go, like 2008, 2009. And this is one of those additions to the platform, or to AppEgine, that I believe really drives the technical adoption of AppEgine, and makes it such a strong platform within the entire ecosystem. Because as mentioned before, if you look at some of the other applications or some of the other things that we can do within the cloud platform, like run your application basically on a computer engine instance, or run a Docker on it, and things like that. Having that kind of especially if you're a novice user, or if you're brand new to the cloud platform, it takes a bit more. There's a lot of pieces that you have to put in place, and with AppEgine, it's there from the get-go. You just get it out of the box. So I think that's a pretty cool feature, or not really a cool feature, a very important feature, and I think it was a great addition to whatever you want to do in the application. Another thing with versioning and all that, I know that for some of the applications we put our stuff in modules and then have different versions of that. Yep. With all the hype going on about microservices and Docker and all that, how do you see AppEgine within that whole architectural thought of microservices and all that?
Yeah, so for quite a long time, we had the ability to wire together multiple components of applications within AppEgine, and we used to call them modules, and today we now call them services. So effectively to reflect that kind of architectural design pattern called microservices. And so it's very easy to componentize your application, to break it up into smaller components. Maybe you have individual development teams. They may be working in different languages to provide different aspects of your application, different services within your application, and effectively decomposing a large monolithic application down into smaller services and then wiring them together. And it's very, very straightforward. And so you would deploy a module as you would do an application, or you can deploy multiple modules together as part of a bigger application. You can also version individual services, modules, and I keep switching through modules and services. We changed the name recently. So you can effectively version individual services. So you can, one of the strengths of microservices is the ability to actually iterate on small components of your application rather than having to redeploy an entire monolith. And you can do that extremely effectively on AppEgine as well. So once you have a new iteration of an individual service within your application, you can deploy that as a new version, and you can do the same traffic splitting that we described earlier across those individual versions. And that's extremely powerful as well. So yeah, it's extremely simple to do microservice-based architectures on Google AppEgine. And that also includes calling out to other services as well, in exactly the same way as we talked about for the main application.
Yeah, it actually, I didn't dare call it microservices yet, but I might actually just start doing that. One of the applications that we did recently, it has a lot of different modules or services in there, ranging from front-end service to a whole bunch of different backend services that are dealing with PubSub and things like that. One of the really cool things about this, by the way, I mentioned PubSub before, but this application, it ties into Google Drive and all that, and it's catching events, and that's causing entries into PubSub, and we can really process if you let the application run free, as we call it, with PubSub, it'll just start spinning up instances and instances until until your entire PubSub is empty or it's done with, and then it'll just break everything down again, which is really awesome, because with it is PubSub will notice that, I'm seeing that my requests are being handled in so many milliseconds. Let's see if I can do more requests, and if I can do more requests, and do more requests. And AppEngine just scales for that. One caveat: make sure that you set your PubSub so that it has a long enough timeout that if you're adding additional instances on AppEngine, it actually allows you the time to spin up your AppEngine instance, which usually takes about a couple of seconds. But you have to set it as a threshold in your PubSub. Otherwise, the PubSub will fail because it took too long for the service to answer, and then you get more and more requests in your PubSub, and you get more and more instances, and you get a whole circus there. So pro tip of the day: make sure that you align your instance startup time with your PubSub timeout time, and then you'll have a beautifully fast system.
So one thing I'll just quickly mention on that is you can control the amount you scale as well, because you pay for instances as you increase, but you can also limit the number of instances you have. And if you set your timeouts and configure PubSub appropriately, PubSub will effectively act as a shock absorber. So when you're getting busy periods where you don't really want to scale beyond a certain amount of instances to keep the cost down, PubSub can effectively act as a shock absorber and buffer those incoming requests until they get ready to be serviced. That's better suited for back-end type asynchronous services, where you don't have to have a user basically sitting waiting for a request to come in. You don't want to experience high latency when they're connected to your app. But when you're doing back-end stuff, offline processing, asynchronous processing, then that thing's kind of perfect, because you can have all of these requests being buffered up. You have a small pool of instances servicing those requests. And when the traffic starts to go down a bit, we can scale back down again, back to a lower level of instances. And again, another point you mentioned earlier is that scale isn't about necessarily always scaling upwards. It's also about scaling downwards to make sure you only pay for what you need, and pay for what you're using, pay for what you need effectively. So.
Yeah, I think that's actually a very strong differentiator with some other platforms, where you can see that you can scale up, but scaling down is actually always cumbersome, and AppEngine just takes care of that for you. One of the things that we've seen over the past years that really changes, I think if we look at the broader picture of identity and access management, is at first you would have like 3 different roles. You could be like the owner of your AppEngine project, you could be a developer, you could be a viewer. And that sometimes caused some concerns when it came to differentiating in responsibilities when deploying an enterprise application. With the whole IAM, Identity and Access Management, that Google has implemented in Cloud Platform, there's definitely an impact on that on AppEngine as well. Can you maybe explain how that ties into what we see with how IAM and AppEngine are or how AppEngine actually benefits from IAM, I should say.
Yeah, so we all understand. I mean, up until recently, until we launched our IAM product, effectively, we had 3 roles: owner, editor, and viewer. So you could own the project, you could own the stuff that was deployed to the product, you could edit the stuff that was deployed to the product, or you could even view it. And that doesn't map very well to the functions that are within most companies, most development teams. So sometimes you want people to be able to deploy applications, but not to be able to change them or break them anyway, those kind of things. And so eventually what IAM allows you to do is map roles within organizations to the power to do things within a cloud project, and that effectively includes AppEngine as well. So it's much more granular than it was before. You can control much better the level at which these permissions are set, allowing people to do different things. And so basically you can divide your organization up into different roles, and then map those roles to IAM roles, and make sure that people only have the access that they need. Make sure that everybody does have the access they need, but make sure that they have no more than the access that they need. Because even people can do things inadvertently and break things. And to make sure that people don't have those kind of rights to be able to do those kind of things is extremely important. And that plays not just into AppEngine, but to all cloud services as well. And that includes things like BigQuery, Google Compute Engine, Google Cloud Vision API, all of those things.
Cool. And one of the nice things is obviously with if you run a pretty big AppEngine application, then you start accumulating quite a bit of log information, and that log information is easily passed into BigQuery now. And then using IAM on that, it's a TLA, and I have to get used to it. But anyway, using IAM on it will allow you to actually give your operations people a very good insight on what is happening. And that's at least how we're applying that and employing that. With the fact that AppEngine is probably the oldest application in the entire Google Cloud platform stack, can I say that if you look at the Google Cloud platform stack as a bunch of building blocks, AppEngine is really one of the building blocks that can reach out to all the different parts and really bring a lot of that together. Well, it's my opinion, but do you also see that? And is that how we should position AppEngine?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that the application doesn't have to make use of solely or exclusively Google Cloud Platform services. It can use other services as well. You may have faster access to Google Cloud Platform services and other Google services as well, because you're actually running within inside Google. But you can take advantage of any services pretty much running anywhere. And again, of course, that's an example of using Twitter, but you can call that to any other APIs and any other services. You get some benefits from it because of the lower latency from running these kind of things on AppEngine. Again, we used the example of Cloud Vision API earlier. We've got Google Cloud Storage. We have BigQuery, Google BigQuery, which I'm going to ask you about in a second. We have Google Compute Engine running virtual machines. We have all of this entire stack. And on the data processing side, we have many interesting components there, including machine learning coming up, the vision speech APIs. We also have things like managed Hadoop services. So if you want to run MapReduces, you can do that as well. We have a service called Cloud Dataflow, which can do pipelining, effectively stream and batch processing using effectively the same code. And that's extremely powerful as well. And ultimately, BigQuery, the back end for data analytics, which is extremely powerful, which everybody should be using, because it's going to really effectively change your life when you do. So Stefan, just right back to you. So talk to me about how Qlouder are using BigQuery and AppEngine together.
Right. What we have is we have a number of projects where a bunch of customers, or where our customers have a bunch of data, which is big enough for which it makes sense to actually put it in BigQuery. And we have one particular case where we're collecting a lot of information. It's internal data, and the data is kind of separated, or we can separate the data with different organizational units within the organization. And so what we use, obviously there's some reporting that we need to do that goes across all the different organizational units and things like that. So that's fine, and using BigQuery on that, and maybe you can just use like a regular reporting tool on that to get some of the cool graphs out that we can do with BigQuery. But there's also some information, and especially once we start distributing the information, that we only want to show particular information from an organizational unit to the management of that particular organizational unit, or to the people in that organizational unit, and including some of the other with some benchmarking as how other organizational units are performing. And doing that without any business logic around it is actually pretty difficult. So what we've done is we actually used AppEngine to, in this particular case, go into a Google directory, get the organizational units, look at the particular user, identifying what organizational unit it is, and so when the user does a query, the query is not going, or when the user is requesting data, the request is not going to BigQuery directly, but it's going to AppEngine first, and then AppEngine is going to enrich the query with the actual organizational unit, and then pass the request on behalf of the user, get the data, and return the data to the user. So that's how we're actually using AppEgine to start integrating big data and BigQuery in this particular case, but big data in general into a business application, into a business process, while still applying some of the business rules. So that's one of the ways how we combine AppEgine and BigQuery. And what we've seen is it's at least for the way that we build the applications and for this particular customer, it is a very effective way of separating data, enriching data, and adding some business rules, but also to get from that step where BigQuery is just a reporting tool or the basis to do reporting on, to actually getting that big data or that BigQuery data into your business applications and run your application for that. So I think that's a very powerful way of using AppEgine and BigQuery together.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah.
Okay.
So I think we've had quite a good discussion on the different functions, the different options and things how we can use AppEgine. I think you mentioned your I/O talk on AppEgine and doing that tour around the Google Cloud Platform. Yeah. I can definitely advise people to do a quick query on that, and we'll see if we can get the URL on the screen as well. Yeah. But to definitely look at that presentation. I've seen it. It was a really good presentation. It gives you a very good overview of the cloud platform as a whole, but also what AppEgine can do for you. So, any closing remarks? Any closing thoughts that you might want to share with the audience?
Just to quickly mention that the flexible environment for AppEgine is currently in beta. We're moving rapidly towards general availability of that. So just bear that in mind if you're using flexible. It doesn't come with any SLAs currently. And there's also standard as well, which you can use in production today. So yeah, I think that's pretty about it. It's been a lot of fun, and it's good to talk about AppEgine and all of these components and how they wire together. But I think the most important part is that the zero ops angle for this is extremely important. Getting away from having to worry about managing machines and infrastructure is extremely important for everybody developing applications today. And AppEgine is an exemplifier of that. Just focus on your code, write your code, push it out to AppEgine, and AppEgine will take care of running and deploy it at scale, and all of those other things that you need and that you care about. The ability to debug it live in production, to trace RPC calls, to tune effectively your application on an ongoing basis to make sure it's performing as well as it can do. I think those things are extremely powerful. And AppEgine is also the entry point into all of those things that Google Cloud Platform related, all of those other services that we give you. But also you can access the entire cloud from Google AppEgine as well. So I think that's pretty much sums it up for me.
Yeah. I doubt if I can add anything to that because it was a complete statement. Yeah, definitely for novice, but also for very experienced developers. If you're looking at a cloud, or if you're already working with a cloud, definitely check out AppEgine because it has, as Mandy said, such a good way it's a very good way to have access to all those cloud services. With that, I think we're pretty much done. I would like to invite everybody to, if we haven't answered your questions, we'll get back to you on those questions for sure. And if you can, please join us on the 5th of July in the Amsterdam office to have a good discussion on all things Google Cloud Platform, Firebase, AppEgine, BigQuery, and all that. So with that, thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.